Hello everybody, how's it going today? Glowplasma, one here back in day, talk about Weekly Shonen Jump, issue number 9 of good old 2025. I know we are just like 3 issues into the year of 2025, but like the magazine's been running, so it's like, I don't know. The beginning of the year with Weekly Shonen Jump always gets me whenever it's like, okay, we've had 3 issues this year. We are 4 weeks into the next year of, I don't even know what I'm saying at this point, I don't know. All I do know is that this was a great issue of Shonen Jump this week. I mean, there were so many big things that happened. I mean, most importantly, I think, is that Undead Unluck's final chapter came out this week, which is going to be the first thing we were about to talk about in typical fashion, being that Undead Unluck has been the series that I've read first every single week. Well, that's a bit of a lie. My Hero is always the first series I'd read, but then Undead Unluck was always the second series I was read after that. And whenever My Hero ended, Undead Unluck became the first chapter I opened each week, and it just feels so weird to finally understand that it's going to be done. And I think after this week, I'm going to go and change up how I read all of my chapters in the order I do it in, because definitely we need to have a little bit of shakeup. Like Ichi the Witch is going to be probably moving closer towards the top. Maybe Kagurabachi will be the first chapter I open. I honestly don't really know, but there was a lot of really good manga this week, and granted, there were a few chapters that sort of left me unsatisfied. Astro Royale, we will be talking about you as normal, and of course, as you can see on my screen, Astro Royale has ranked last these past 2 weeks, and as you can also see on my screen today, we have 14 series to talk about. Of course, all ones that run in Weekly Shonen Jump regularly, and then Ruri Dragon, which, according to the Weekly Shonen Jump wiki, is still part of Shonen Jump because it is in V-Jump. It's just a digital exclusive, so I count Ruri Dragon as being part of Jump for this spreadsheet, so yeah, we've got all of that there. But yeah, just a really good issue of Jump as normal, and if you guys have not watched one of these videos before, it's pretty simple how we do things here. I'm just going to go through, ramble about all 14 of these chapters, and hopefully under 30 minutes this time, because the last 2 videos, even though they have not been uploaded yet, being that I've actually been really good on recording these, but not editing them and putting them up. And that is mostly because the past few videos have been like 45 minutes long, and I know my rambling here at the beginning is not helping that very much, but it is what it is there. But we're going to ramble about all of these chapters, and then rank them from worst to best. Of course, what I thought the best chapter was, all the way down to what I thought the 14th best chapter was, or the worst chapter of the week. And then also pick a character of the week for who was the coolest character, in my opinion. So that's really all there is there. And hey, if you don't agree with the opinion I give in this video, just go down in the description box down below and just like, let me know. Is my opinion wrong? It probably is. I mean, I'm pretty open about that, but it sort of is what it is there. But yeah, without any further ado, let's talk about manga. Of course, like I said, starting with Undead Unluck's final chapter. I think it's like, what, 239 if I'm not mistaken. And this is just a really fun chapter, all centered around Andy and Fuko's wedding. Because of course, the whole thing in Undead Unluck is like, hey, all of the negator powers are gone, so now everybody is just on the day of their pretty much lives, pretty much, right? We understand that Andy and Fuko's wedding is happening on August 1st of 2020, which is actually the date that the series started whenever Fuko was getting ready to jump off the bridge, and Andy, being undead, came around and did all of his shenanigans and stuff there, which reminds us to the beginning of the series that was really rough. And honestly, with Undead Unluck, I think it was this thing where the beginning of the series was very rough until about the spoil arc, and then the series was just like really, really good and consistent, and like the spring arc is going to be one of the best arcs I remember from Undead Unluck, like a really good, just like constant, very awesome. We met Haruka there, got a whole bunch of stuff on top, like just a lot of really good moments to happen in this arc. And then the final arc with all of the master rules sort of dipped down a little bit whenever this final loop first occurred, but I do think this is a very nice way to end up the entire series of Undead Unluck. We have this really fun color page spread where we see all of the various members of the Union getting Andy and Fuko all dressed up in wedding attire, pretty much. And this is a really fun chapter because it really does show us what every single member of the Union is currently doing. I mean, we see that Julia is a fencing pro, Victor is a sports trainer. We learned that Fuko is an adventurer, and Andy is also somebody who works for a support group called Wind, and he is a security force captain for it. We also see that Rip and Nico are also working for this Wind organization that's also sponsored by Fuko, being that Fuko did go back in time and was able to pretty much knock out Rockefeller's whole industry and get the oil baron tycoon under her name instead. So Yeah, we always have to remember Fuko's got the money. But the whole thing about this chapter is both Andy and Fuko totally forgot about the wedding that they were supposed to have. And I really love that there's a little moment where Andy says like, oh yeah, she is definitely late. And Fuko is like, oh yeah, he's definitely late. And it's just a little bit of a funny moment there. But the rest of this chapter is just all about everybody sort of hanging out, having fun with each other. Out of all my favorite characters, sort of I mentioned, we see that Shin and Mui are both married, and they have a pair of twins named Mao and Xiao, which is just like, okay, that's a little cute and funny. And if I'm not mistaken, that is actually maybe the names of the siblings that both of the two of them lost, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe Mui didn't lose a sibling. I honestly don't 100% remember. But also we see that Chikara is a photographer, and I really love the little note that he is Tatiana's exclusive cameraman, though he feels a little bit bad about it and is thinking about going private. And Chikara is always one of my favorite characters in Undead Unluck, so it's pretty cool to see him. And then also, Sean is also here, and he's like, hey, I'm an actor, and he's currently struggling to land a lead role. I thought it was a really funny moment. But we then have the moment where Andy and Fuko finally come down, and they just get married, and we have the ending narration for Undead Unluck, like, hey, Undead Unluck. This is a story of Andy and Fuko Izumo and everyone living in this world and their quest for the greatest death ever. And we end off Undead Unluck, the series, on the lines that ended off chapter 1 of the series. I think that back then, of course, this is Undead Andy and Unluck Fuko Izumo and their quest for the greatest death ever. But yeah, it's honestly very bittersweet to see this series end. After I read this chapter this morning, I sort of had to just sit down and be like, man, wow, I can't believe this series is, like, actually over. I mean, if we go back to my spreadsheet, I mean, you guys can see that this was one of the first chapters that I covered here on my spreadsheet was Undead Unluck. And, like, now, as I think I went over this last week, Dr. Stone's ended, Mash One's ended, My Hero's ended, and now I just have Elusive Samurai and Blue Box left going, because now Undead Unluck has had its head on the chopping block and is, like, getting cast out away from here, which is just so weird to really think about. But yeah, Undead Unluck, I will always remember the series. It was so awesome and just really so fun, and I think it was one of the better chapters this week. I mean, as much as the ending of the series for all the master rules and all of that didn't really seem the best, I think this final chapter of Undead Unluck did have a lot of good to it, so we're just going to set it up here towards the top for now and just call it a day there. The next chapter up is, of course, One Piece. This was another really interesting chapter because, like I said, it mainly just focuses on Nami, Luffy, Zoro, and Roto all going into King Harold's castle to go through and pretty much explore to try to find the keys for Loki, pretty much. And through this, we get a lot of necessary backstory for some of the giants and for Harujin and all of these other various things. And Roto provides a lot of this, and honestly, this chapter does do a lot to make Roto a lot more of a sympathetic character, being that we sort of learn a little bit of as his backstory is that, like, he was always bullied and not really loved by everyone else around him, but Harujin was just like, hey, I'm going to become the king of the giants, pretty much, and Roto was like, hey, I'll follow you, and Harujin accepted him. It really seems like Harujin is sort of mirroring Luffy in this very cool way. But it's a very good chapter sort of learning about all this. We also see the picture of King Harold and how he ripped off his horns as a mark of ancient giant blood. It's a really, really cool thing, and it really makes him up to be like, man, this guy was so cool. I wish we could have seen him alive. But also, that means Loki is incredibly powerful. And then we go down to the underworld where we see that Grunko is currently, like, kicking Loki pretty much and is, like, using their arrow through, as we sort of learn in this chapter. And eventually we also get introduced to Friggerland Shamrock, who is the Shanks looking character who we have been seeing before. So yeah, it's pretty interesting to see that, and also, like, this really confirms the whole thing to, like, okay, Shanks is also Friggerland's child also, or St. Garling's child, so really just building up this idea, but it's also like, okay, these people are here on Elbaf, and, like, his whole fun thing is like, hey, the victorious warriors of Elbaf who conquered New World long, long ago will be brought under the command of the world government once and for all. Pretty cool things right here, and it's going to be interesting what happens here, and really, who is Shamrock, the commander of the Holy Knights, this world noble guy? It's just really interesting seeing. This was a very good chapter of One Piece because it really just built up a lot of things in the series. One Piece was definitely good this week. Now, Kagurabachi this week was also very, very fun, and normally I will be doing a long-form video on Kagurabachi, about 20 to 30 minutes, where I delve into all of this chapter, but really, this was Kagurabachi becoming John Wick for a chapter. That's really what I felt this chapter was. I've actually recently watched the movie John Wick for the first time for a college project that I had to do, and it was sort of very interesting just to sit down and watch that movie and then sort of see how it's influenced Kagurabachi in this way. Of course, we get introduced to this hotel in this chapter. I think it was like the Kyoto Blood something hotel. I don't really particularly feel like opening the chapter to go see what it was exactly. But we pretty much just get introduced to that and this whole idea where Chihiro's like, okay, he's been able to copy this technique from Samura and Iruha from just seeing them do it at work, and like Chihiro's got these copying eyes that Kunishige had. Pretty cool thing, and I do like sort of how that's being built up is like, okay, Chihiro also has a few little genetics in him that also make him to where he's got these heightened abilities in this way. And then the whole end of the chapter where he's like, hey guys, or hey to the Masumi, Iori wants to know more about her father, right? And in this hotel, nobody can apparently track us for now, so what if we just tell her everything about Samura, and then let her decide if she wants to keep this knowledge or if she wants to put it back away. And of course, we know that she is going to want to keep the knowledge, and of course, probably help out the group, fight along Chihiro, fight along Hikari, and all of these other things, but yeah, very good chapter of Kagurabachi, and Chihiro's the thing of like, hey, I've got 24 hours, and then we can protect her for good. Just really cool. Kagurabachi was very, very good this week. Ruri Dragon was just a nice sort of change of pace. Of course, we're sort of still in this school festival arc where just like everybody's having a good time, everybody's having fun, just doing all that sort of thing. And it's another chapter where Ruri has to explain to a lot of people that she is part dragon, and she does this mainly by like breathing fire through to the end of the chapter. And there's this whole part in the middle of the chapter where like people are going and playing the game where they got to pull out a slip of paper out of a thing and like then find somebody who fits their criteria. And pretty much Ruri is just such an interesting character that almost all of these prompts actually fit her perfectly. And she's sort of just running around. There's a whole bunch of jokes going on there, like, oh man, Ruri's been used like a slave almost, like ha ha ha, like so funny. But really the real kicker to this chapter is Ruri just like being like, guys, hey, I don't like you guys actively just calling me a dragon to my face. It really wounds and hurts my pride in a way. And her sort of whole explanation of like, guys, I'm fine with you guys calling me whatever you want, but I am Ruri, and I'm just a normal person like you. It's just a very nice moment, and Ruri Dragon was very cool this week. Not the best chapter ever, but just a very middling chapter, if I have to say so myself. Again, Kill Blue was another just interesting chapter to me, because of course at the beginning of this chapter we get this whole idea, okay, Ogami gets some more of these drugs that can turn him back into his previous self, and as you'll sort of learn, they don't quite have the same effect they normally have, as this chapter sort of like doesn't show you until the very last page where it is revealed, okay, Ogami is going back to being 28 years old whenever he was sort of at the peak of his assassin career pretty much. And him and Kakeru are then going to go and pretty much scuffle with Principal Oka to see how all of this works. And the whole idea is Ogami throughout this entire chapter thinks that this is really the end of everything, right? And he's like, hey, we'll know how these drugs work, and like then we'll take care of Oka, and then I won't have any reason to still be here at this school to protect Norin or do any of these other things. So he really acts like this is his last day around the school, and like everybody really picks up on it around him. And then the end of the chapter is him and Kakeru going and like, hey Oka, we're about to fuck you up pretty much, right? And that's where we end this chapter of Kill Blue. But honestly, my favorite parts of Kill Blue are mainly when Otagami shows that he has a real side to him, like, hey, I know I could just be doing a lot of weird things with the way I am now, but he does it and really acts like a mature adult in a lot of these scenes. And it's something that I think we've been getting a lot more recently in Kill Blue, and especially when Otagami is just in his older Hitman form, just doing some cool shit. Like, I always just enjoy the days whenever that happens. But really, Kill Blue, very good. I don't think it was the best chapter of the week, but I also don't think it was anywhere close to worse. We'll put it like low middle, because I think that's a good place to put this chapter for sure. Now, Ichi the Witch was a fascinating chapter this week. I mean, of course, we open up this chapter, and Ichi is pretty much in what he calls the magic circle, or I forget if he names it a magic circle, if all of his magic's named the magic circle, but he's pretty much like going around like, oh man, am I not dead, and all of these things, and he sort of runs around, and he just sees Oro Oro, the Hisame magic, and the Raiko magic sort of all sitting together with each other, just sort of talking about how pretty much moronic Ichi is, and Ichi comes up, and they pretty much just have a little discussion. And Ichi's like, oh, so this is a magic circle. So they tell him it's a magic circle. And pretty much as explained to him, like, it's his own inner world, pretty much, where all of his magics live together and sort of exist with all of this stuff right now, right? And I also just love a bunch of the jokes to get here, just like how Oro is portrayed as like this agent of chaos. I mean, whenever Ichi asks about what's going on outside, Oro just like pulls out a remote and like a television screen appears pretty much, or the Asami magic and the Raiko magic sort of move it over. And then we can see the battle going on in the outside world where Deskros is fighting the World Hater. And then Togise appears and just helps out Deskros, and they just fight this thing together for a moment. I really love this moment here where Togise uses her Durandala ice ability, or her silver snow ability, sort of frees up the World Hater, and then uses the mushroom blast magic that she just acquired, and then Deskros just blows it up and lights it on fire. It's just a really cool scene that goes back and forth until the World Hater decides to get out of here. And like, he's got a really cool line of like, hey, I appear, I warp, I leave, and that's all. But as my destruction continues, one day, eventually, I'll have destroyed the whole world. And that is the sole reason I exist. And just the way he looks and like the crazy expression we get from the World Hater. I mean, earlier in this chapter, we saw an image of him where he was headless and he was just holding his head in his hand and he puts it back on his head. The World Hater is just like a really cool and like the epitome of like, okay, this is a beast, not a human, who is incredibly strong. And it's just really, really cool. Until eventually Ichi, who is watching this from the inner world, is like, hey, just you wait, one day I swear, I'm going to hunt you down. And it almost seems like the World Hater acknowledges that Ichi says this, as the World Hater smiles and just walks away. And then, as he's just watching all of this, Oro then just comes up behind him and says like, hey kid, you're going to end up a sacrifice. And Ichi's very confused by that, like a lot of us audience are. And Oro just is like, hey, I'm sick of trying to explain it to you. Just ask that insufferable witch whenever you wake up. So like, what does he mean by this? How is Ichi going to become a sacrifice? And what does Deskros have to break to him? Like, as far as I'm aware, we actually don't know what this means, but either way, a great chapter of Ichi the Witch as we see that Ichi wakes up in a hospital bed pretty much, and we see that Kumagi is like laying by his side pretty much like on the edge of the bed, like sort of, I guess, tending to Ichi, like making sure that he's okay, and Ichi just wakes up as Kumagi's asleep there, and yeah, I'm so interested to see what happens next, because also, like I didn't mention earlier in Kagurabachi, this is a massive week of like conflicts ending and sort of next arcs beginning in this way, because like, hey, Kagurabachi is ended, the big fight is now they're sort of here in this John Wick style hotel pretty much, and getting a little bit of a training arc it may look like with Chihiro. Undead Luck, of course, is just over. Kill Blue is actually starting a confrontation, and Ichi the Witch is also ending one, but also posing a lot more mysteries for us as the audience. Ichi the Witch was just incredible this week. Great chapter, as always. Sidcraft Love is a Mystery is a bit of a different one for me personally, as this whole chapter is really where stakes start to get ramped up in Sidcraft, as we see that Sid learns about this character named Zerocraft, who is apparently a guy who is very similar to Genshi Sojo from Kagurabachi, to where like, hey Sidcraft, I absolutely love you, and because of that, I am going to burden you with all of these cases because I love you so much and I'm planning to craft all of these things, right? It's a little bit of like a twisted love relationship there, but still seems like it's going to be interesting. There's the whole thing between Souffle and Sidcraft being this is a rom-com where Souffle has a bomb strapped to her, and oh no, Sidcraft has to solve it. But as he's solving it, the water piles up above him, and oh no, Souffle gives him a kiss because that's what you do in rom-coms pretty much. And then Lulu comes and saves everybody, and then it's pretty much okay. We're starting on this next sort of little bit of a thing here where Zerocraft's going to be more of a caper who's putting all of these mysteries in. It really seems like Lulu is part of the team, and it is just going to be really interesting to see where Sidcraft goes from here. I saw a lot of people online this morning saying this was one of their favorite chapters of the week, and I'm a little bit more hesitant. I think it was a fun and I think it was a good chapter, but it's just personally not my favorite thing that I'm reading constantly, so we're just going to put it down here towards the bottom for now. Astro Royale, good old Astro Royale. This was a chapter that just really left me unsatisfied this week in reading manga. Do I think it was terrible? No. But normally by the end of a manga chapter, I feel some sort of, like, emotion towards it. Like Sid Craft, I had a fun time reading it, and at the end of this chapter, I, like, decently smiled because I thought it was a funny thing, and, like, I'm sort of happy to see where this chapter goes. But this chapter really revolves around this guy named Hachiku, who is this guy who Hibaru was fighting last time. And as you'll sort of see, like, Hibaru really just ends the match really, really fast. As we see that, what is his name? Hachiku has this flame ability, and he, like, creates this, like, little, like, flame dragon snake looking thing, and Hibaru's like, okay, let me explain my powers to you, explains his, bare-handed magnum, and then just goes and punches his flame snake, pretty much, and Hachiku is out of the ring, pretty much, and everyone's like, okay, the winner is Hibaru Yotsurugi, and all of the people who are sort of, like, building up Hachiku are like, hey, why is he doing this, right? And then Hibaru just comes up and is like, hey, Hachiku, I know you want to fight me. And he sort of just, like, picks up Hachiku's flame, throws it up towards all of the Yakuza Association members, and Hachiku makes it explode in this moment. Hibaru gets his brother, and then Hachiku's like, hey, man, I owe you one, Hibaru. And that is pretty much where we end this chapter of Astro Royale. Like, I really, really want to enjoy this series, but I remember the beginning of Tokyo Revengers was this thing where it's like, oh man, there's this huge motivation and there's stakes here. Like, we have to save Draken or else he's not going to be around. And like, so think like we got to save Mikey or else we're going to reset. And like, all of this leads to me being able to save Hina at the end of the day. And it was built up really well, but there's just no stakes here. It's like, of course, we know Hibaru is going to win because he needs the Daybreak ore. And it's just like, I just don't really feel anything towards this series right now, which is really the biggest detriment a series can have, is like, I would honestly much prefer to read a series like Hill Blue, where it's like, sometimes I'm like, okay, this is fucking stupid, but I can still smile and laugh about it, but like, here, there's nothing that I want to smile or laugh about. It's just, there's no emotion that I really feel coming from these pages. Even like when Hachiku just says like, hey, protected my brother, like I spent my whole life and like he's the world to me. Like these words just don't have any deep emotion to them. It's just like, I don't understand why I need to care. And it's really for that reason that Astro Royale it's just gotta be on the bottom of the series. It's the only series that I've read these past 2 weeks that has truly left me unsatisfied in any way whatsoever to where I'm like, okay, yeah, let's just close it out and read the next one. So, I'm really sorry to say, but that's just my thoughts on Astro Royale right now. Himiten was honestly one of my more favorite chapters of the week. It's probably going to go up here in this higher tier also, because it's also just the Kanna chapter, and as the series has been going on, I have been definitely liking Kanna really the most out of any of the other girls. I mean, Kanai, I think, is a really fun character. Of course, Yoshino is a very good character, too. But it's just something about how Kanai and Iomori interact, and of course, what is a romantic comedy of a series to where it just makes me enjoy it a whole lot more. And to Sid Craft's detriment, like Sid Craft, like I said, is a lot more on the comedy aspects. This is something I talked about last week. And Himiten is a lot more on the emotional maturity level of it. As this whole chapter revolves around Kanna, she's going to be starring in a movie. And because of this, oh boy, you know what she needs to do? She needs to get her hair bleached again. And what we learned here is that Iomori's family runs a hair clinic. So there's a little bit of like discussion around everybody. And like, okay, Iomori, you take Kanna to your family's hair thing and they'll get it done for you, right? So we see that Iomori goes by. I think we get a good look at Iomori's mother. I don't know if we've particularly met her again. And it did take me a minute because his mother calls him Tenichi. And it took me forever to be like, oh, is this Iomori's like first name like Tenichi? And then I'm like, wait a second. Hima Tin. And I'm like, oh my gosh, why did this take me so stupidly long to figure out? Like, I'm sure that we knew his first name was Tenichi before, but I had a moment where I was sitting here in my dorm room and I read this chapter and it finally clicked to me and I just had to get up out of my chair and like walk around my dorm floors for a second. I'm like, why is such a simple reveal just like so stupid and like makes me smile so much? 'Cause I'm like, oh, of course it's Tenichi, right? But there's this whole thing where Iomori's mother is taking a good look at Kanna. He's like, oh man, Iomori, you got yourself a good looking girl there with you. Like, oh my gosh. And it's a little bit of a thing where it's like, okay, is Iamori's mom really doing this? And as we'll get to, like, there's jokes later in the chapter where she's like, well, if he's anything like his father, he's a late bloomer. And it's like, okay, I don't particularly care, Iamori's mom, right? But it's really just about a little cute thing between Iamori and Kanna, as Iamori's mom is cutting Kanna's hair. There's a lot of, like, really fun things going on between the two of them, and eventually the end of this chapter is a little bit of an interesting thing where not only is Kanna get, like, a very big discount on getting her hair cut, so it presumes that this is going to be a recurring thing where Kanna comes to Iamori's mom's shop to get the haircut. But also, there's this whole thing where it seems like Iamori and his siblings, because I don't remember if he had siblings, but these look very sibling-like to Iamori, and they definitely don't seem to be his parents, so, like, I don't know. I don't know if Iamori has siblings, but that's just the sort of headcanon I'm going on for now. But it seems like Iamori and his two siblings were supposed to be going to the amusement park with their mom today. Well, their mom has to work, and oh no, it looks like they have an extra ticket. So, and of course, Iamori's mom reaches out to Kanna and gives Kanna this ticket. As we see that Iamori and his two siblings get out on the bus and are like, oh man, it seems like it was a girl all of a sudden, right? And then we just see that Kanna is dressed up very, very nicely and is like, hey, Iamori. And Iamori's like, oh my gosh, Kanna. And his two little siblings are like, oh my gosh, this is crazy, right? And the whole thing is like constantly like, hey, I'm Kanna Aizawa and I'm coming with you guys to the amusement park today. Yeah, just a really good chapter. I just really enjoyed this chapter through and through. Got a lot of good laughs out of me. I thought it was just really cute and really fun, and it really has made Kanna one of my favorite characters in Hima 10, so very, very good chapter there for sure. On Exis Kyoshi, we're finally starting the Black Parade, as the whole idea of this chapter is, okay, the Black Parade is going to be happening on June 6th, or I think it's June 6th. It may be like July 6th or something. No, it is June 6th. Oh, yeah, of course, because it's 6/6. And then probably at 6 a.m. something will happen. So it's June 6th. So 6/6, and at 6 a.m. and it's like, oh my gosh. We'll get a pretty cool color page where we see all of the leaders of the various platoons that we will all be like getting like a big introduction page to this chapter, as this chapter is all about June 6th at 2 a.m., which is when the Black Parade is going to be starting, so it's all a massive build up to this whole idea. Really, one of the things that happens here is Oka, the exorcist girl, sort of asks Kyoshi, like, hey, I'm sorry about summoning all of those demons earlier, please protect us, and Kyoshi's like, sure, will do, right? And then we just sort of see, like, okay, the Iron-Blooded Knights, the Sanguis, are here, of course, led by Kyoka, who we got introduced to last chapter. The Knights of Light Concordia with the Sujiri Hijiri platoon are also here, as we see, like, Winchester Matki, Akari's brother, Akari's friend, and of course Sosuke are all here. And of course, the Gates of Hell Chinese restaurant, where of course there's the whole group of Kyoshi, Sasuke, Akari, Nihon, and Jack Joe. And pretty much Nihon and Jack Joe are sort of just sent home, but it's going to be really cool whenever they have their big moment, because I expect at least a chapter where Nihon and Jack Joe get cornered, or Kyoshi's not looking good, and whenever they come in to save the day, I cannot wait for that. It really reminds me of in Mashle Magic and Muscles, wherever Finn was really shown as like not this strong character at all, until there's that moment, which I forget, I think it was like around the chapter 6 or wherever Finn has to show that he's made of something. And it's one of the best chapters of that series, because it's like, oh my gosh, Finn's actually so cool. And that is something I'm really happy to see whenever Nihon and Jack Joe get to do something. Akari is going to sent to be with Kyoka's squad into Sanguis because, like, hey, protect people. And what's his name? Sasaki pretty much has this thing of like, hey, and Kyoshi and I will be exercising to hell out of every demon we can, right? As we see that then the Black Parade is officially starting as a rift opens in the sky. Really fun chapter of Ultimate Exis Kyoshi. I have always been like a big fan of this series. And it seems like we are definitely sort of spiraling towards the end. I don't think it's going to be around for too much longer, but I am happy that Ultimate Exis Kyoshi has been given this chance to sort of see this whole idea pan out, and hopefully we get like another 10 chapters of this series at least, if not a few more. So yeah, even though the Black Parade is starting in this series is almost certainly heading towards its conclusion, Ultimate Exis Kyoshi is always a fun read every week. Kane Banashi is a bit more of a middling chapter before me, because the whole idea is that the Rakugo Federation guy, I think his name is Kosaka, if I'm not mistaken, It may not be Kosaka. I'm not really 100% sure. If it's not Kosaka, my bad. But Kosaka is pretty much going around and just sees like Akane's performance in Paris, and after the fact goes to talk with her and is like, hey, can I interview you? And she's like, hey, and no. And she's like, hey, well, I'll be seeing you soon later, pretty much. And he's like, hey, well, answer me this, when are you coming back to Japan? She's like, hey, didn't I already tell you? Like, I'll be seeing you soon. At the end of the chapter is just this big idea of like, okay, Akane looks like she's coming back to Japan, and in this 3 years, she's grown so much. This is really just a fine chapter, really just building towards what'll be happening next in Akane Banashi. It's not my favorite by sort of any metric or any mean, but it was a fine chapter and sort of a necessary one to build up for the next time. But this does sort of suffer from the Akane Banashi thing, where it feels like legitimately nothing happened in this chapter. Like, of course something did happen, but like, I feel like I read 19 pages of almost fluff in a way, when this, I think, could be condensed down to a lot fewer chapters or a lot fewer pages. But also, I don't think it would have had the impact either, so I don't know. It was definitely just a very middling Akane Banashi chapter. Was it good? Yes, but I don't think it was the best. Blue Box was the next chapter I read, and this was a really fun chapter, sort of reversing the roles between Chinatsu and Yumika, as we pretty much have this whole idea, as we start off from, like, I think, Chinatsu's perspective, wherever she's just thinking about her whole life, and, like, whenever Yumika's like, hey, I'm gonna quit the team for now to go do some other things, and she ended up never coming back to basketball, and of course, till Taiki got that motivation. And we see, like, Chinatsu sit up out of bed in the morning, and just go, she shoots a basket, but she's sort of unfulfilled, and then Taiki walks into the gym, and we just see this sort of loop just repeat over and over, as Chinatsu sort of just, like, realizes everything, and this also sort of is, like, how she got closer to Taiki in this way, and it just goes back and forth until eventually we see, in this current moment, Chinatsu's like, hey, over the past 3 years, I really have gotten stronger. So we see a bunch of moments between not only her and Taiki, but also her just understanding her life and becoming more understandable about who she is as a person. As she just thinks like, hey, I've changed and I'm not going to miss anymore. As she throws up the basketball, sinks it into the thing, and Yumika is on the bench being like, hey, captain, or hey, coach, like, me sitting here ain't doing nothing for a team, you know? And her and the coach sort of had a little bit of back and forth, but she's like, hey, I'm going to put in everything, even if I do get tired. I love this sport so much. As we see the two of them just get out on the battlefield, or not on the court pretty much, as we see that Chinatsu and Yumika are sort of facing off. Yumika runs up, tries to score a goal, but she misses. And Chinatsu grabs it, rebounds, and sinks it in very, very nicely. And Yumika has this moment where she's like, wow, see how easily admiration crumbles away? Am I the one now chasing her? Funny how that works. And that's where we end off this chapter of Blue Box. And it's just this really nice moment of seeing Yumika having to come to terms with everything that's happened here, and really just having to understand that Chinatsu has changed, and if she wants to win, she's going to have to put in everything she's got. Really good chapter of Blue Box, with also just a really good message. So Blue Box, very, very good. The Elusive Samurai was interlude chapter, of course, going from 1333, or no, was it 1343? I honestly forget here real quick. Yeah, 1343 to 1345, so like the 3-year intermission here, as we pretty much just learn a lot about what's going on in the world. And really the big thing this chapter is all about is, okay, of course this is in feudal Japan time and all of this period. Warriors need wives, pretty much, right? And it's this whole idea of, okay, Tokiyuki is now of marrying age, of course, being that he's like 16, which is like, yeah, sure, that's how feudal Japan did it. And of course, the whole thing is like, okay, he's got Mima, Ayako, and Shizuku all around him. And the whole chapter really builds up to this point of Tokiyuki having to come to the fact and realization that he's most likely going to be marrying all three of them. And that's sort of really all there is to this chapter. This was also the anniversary chapter for the Elusive Samurai, if I'm not mistaken. I think this was the time that it started. What is it now? It started in 2021, so 4 years ago, pretty much. So I think this was the anniversary issue. It was a fine chapter, but just like not the most interesting thing in the world either. But also I felt like it was enough where I had a decent smile while reading it, and sort of just like seeing the events that are all sort of going on right now. The Elusive Samurai I found to be pretty fun. Witch Watch was a comedy chapter very much focused on Mi Tsuchiya. I also think she had another name that I'm just like totally forgetting, or Chami. Yeah, Chami is what everybody was pretty much calling her, right? This chapter is all about Chami pretty much, and it pretty much starts off to where Chami has a role of being a in a movie pretty much where she has to learn how to properly swim, and pretty much she just doesn't have a lot of motivation because she just does have Slump to constantly take care of her. Eventually, she goes over to the Otogi house to go hang out with Nico, and Nico ends up casting a spell to where they can sort of like float in the sky and pretty much like act like they're swimming around there. And the whole idea is there's a little bit of a miscommunication whenever they get outside to practice all this swimming and stuff, to where Nico eventually casts a spell that raises up instead of 80 centimeters, she actually goes up 100 meters instead. So they're flying really high in the air. And it's this thing to where, oh no, Nico has suddenly fainted from all of this, and if Nico passes out and the spell sort of lapses, they're going to pretty much fall to the ground to their depth. But hey, there's a big tower in the sky, and Mii's pretty much like, okay, I've got to go swim all the way there to make it. And she pretty much uses her ability and learns to swim this distance pretty much. And the whole idea is that she didn't want anybody, being that she's a model, she didn't want anybody to see her in her bathing suit. And oh no, because of all this comedy stuff, she ended up getting seen in it. It's just a pretty fun little chapter, just all about a little bit of comedy stuff, but also just being reliable on yourself and not relying on other people to do things for you when you're just a competent person also. So really, that's the main message of this chapter. And yeah, I thought Witch Watch was fine this week. Wasn't one of my favorite chapters of the week, but also just wasn't one of the worst either. Yeah, and with that, let's just go and start the ranking all of these in their proper places. Of course, I need to start on the bottom. Astro Royale. I already gave my reasons. Like, I just felt nothing while reading it, so there's just no reason for me to put it any higher. Honestly, we'll probably put the Elusive Samurai next. It was a fine chapter, just not really my cup of tea. So, ELU Elusive Samurai, and then as normal, we will be following up with a good old Sid Craft Love is a Mystery next. Probably followed up by a Witch Watch. It was a fun chapter and one that I did enjoy, but just like very one note in a way, which is something that does happen in a lot of the Witch Watch comedy chapters. But even though this wasn't particularly a comedy chapter, honestly, following it up with Akane Banashi, there's not a whole lot there that I truly enjoyed. And then we will put Kill Blue, like I said. I thought it was a fun chapter with this whole idea of, oh no, Ogami's a 28-year-old now, and I think Kill Blue can have some really fun reveals whenever it does that. Best chapter of the week this week, I honestly think I'm going to give it to Hima 10. I don't know why. I just came out of that chapter just smiling my ass off. I thought it was really funny, and I really did enjoy it. Probably then with an Ichi, or if I could spell Ichi the Witch, which was a pretty fun one. Then I have to give it to Undead Unlock, which is just so crazy to think that this series has ended, which means I now have to come here, and we go 2 below here, so Undead Unlock. Wow, it feels crazy to type this. Ended. Wow. Undead Unlock is over. Just so crazy to think about, man. So that goes for all of those guys. And then we have these few chapters here left to put on. Definitely Kagurabachi, or golly, if I could spell Kagurabachi, we'll put up next. Followed by, yeah, we'll put a One Piece, because I thought One Piece was really, really fun. And I don't know, I just really liked a lot of things that got brought up here. Then we have Ultimate XS Koshi, Boo Box, and Ruri Dragon. I definitely think Ruri Dragon was the weakest of these. Ruri Dragon. And then Ultimate XS Kyoshi and Blue Box, man. Honestly, I'm just want to transform over like how they are right now. So, Ulti, Xro, Kyoshi we'll put next. And then we will put a, if I could spell, a Blue Box right there. And that's all of the chapters. But then, who is the character of the week? This is going to be a very interesting one, because honestly, I have no idea right now. Hima 10 I thought was fun, but really, I don't know, I did like Kanna this week, though. Ichi the Witch, I don't know. I gave it to Death Cross last week, and I don't really think she had a showing. I really liked whenever Togi Issei showed up, though. Undead Unluck, man. Let me just look through that Undead Unluck chapter again, because I don't know, it's just a really fun chapter to go through, and Do I want to pick somebody from Undead Unluck? Man, I just really don't know who I want to pick this week. I don't know. Let me just think about it for a second. Okay, after a little bit of, like, deliberation on all this, I think there were a few good characters that we could have picked here. I think Kagurabachi Chihiro was a very good choice. I think One Piece also had the introduction of Sham Rockwell, so I think he's going to be doing a lot more further into the series. But honestly, just going through all of these, I legitimately think my favorite character of the week was Ogami from Kill Blue. I don't know why, it's a case where Kill Blue just has a character that makes me just go like, you know what? I actually decently like that, and I think Ogami really did that for me this week of Kill Blue. So yeah, we're picking Ogami there, and with the fall of that is all 14 series, of course, ranked this week from worst to best. Of course, Himatan was my favorite chapter of the week, and Astro Royale was the worst chapter of the week, now 3 weeks running. And my favorite character was Ogami from Kill Blue. I'm honestly really excited to see what he does next time in the series. But yeah, with that, thank you guys so very much for watching this video. And of course, Weekly Shonen Jump issue number 9 of good old 2025. Of course, I've got plenty of other Weekly Shonen Jump issue reviews up on the channel, so, like, if you want to hear my thoughts on Weekly Shonen Jump issue number, 40 of 2025, or 2024, I've got a video up on the channel. You can go check that out, not only in the description box down below where it's going to be linked, but also in the end card of this video, and also just go to my YouTube channel, of course, Glowplasma, where I talk about too many anime and manga related content things, and normally a few weeks after they come out. Even though I'm recording this on the date this issue came out, I'm actually recording this about 2 hours after these chapters came out. I know this video is going to be a little bit late from that point, so is what it is there, but really good chapters this week, and yeah, I'll catch you guys next time for Weekly Shonen Jump issue number 10 of 2025. Again, this was issue number 9, and I will catch you guys next time. This will be Glowplasma231, signing out, and man, Undead Unluck, you had a really good run. It's really crazy to think that you are finally over. I'll see you guys next time.